Have you ever really thought about the choices you make every day? Not just the big ones, but all of them? Well, today, we're going to dive into a fascinating book by Manoj Tripathi called The Power of Decision Making. We're going to uncover some of the hidden forces that shape our choices and, by extension, our entire lives.
All right, so get ready for this number, 35,000. According to the research in the book, that's roughly how many decisions an average person makes every single day. Yeah, you heard that right. That works out to a choice about every 2 seconds you're awake. And the wildest part? Most of them are happening completely under the radar, on autopilot.
And that brings us right to the heart of the book, summed up in this one powerful line: your decisions decide your destiny. Just let that sink in for a second. If we're making 35,000 choices a day, each one, from what to eat for breakfast to how you react in a tough conversation, is like a tiny brushstroke painting the picture of your future. The question is, what kind of picture are you painting?
So you see, it's not just the sheer number of choices that matters. The real journey here, and what we're about to get into, is pulling back the curtain on those invisible forces that are guiding us, often without us even realizing it.
You know, to really grasp this, it helps to look at the word decision itself. It actually comes from Latin, meaning to cut off. So when you make a decision, you're not just picking something. It's a powerful act of saying no to every other option. You're committing. You're cutting off all the other paths.
So if decisions are that important, why is it so darn hard to make good ones sometimes? Well, the answer is inside our own heads. Our brains are wired for efficiency, which is great, but that also means they love taking shortcuts. And these shortcuts can lead us straight into hidden traps and paradoxes in our own thinking.
Okay, let's try a little test right now. This is a classic riddle from the book. A bat and a ball cost $1.10 in total. The bat costs exactly $1 more than the ball. So, how much does the ball cost? Take a second, you can even pause and think it over.
So, did you say 10 cents? If you did, you're in good company. That's what most people's brains jump to immediately, because it just feels right. But that's the shortcut, and it's wrong. The correct answer is actually 5 cents. It's a perfect, simple example of how our brain's desire for a quick fix can make us skip right over basic logic.
Now, this tendency we have can actually be used against us. Tripathi talks about this concept called zonerism. It's when someone uses a fact that's technically true to lead you to a completely false conclusion. The classic example is drumming up fear about dihydrogen monoxide, which is of course just the chemical name for water. Makes you wonder, where have you seen that tactic used before?
And it's not always about being tricked. Sometimes our brains just get overloaded. This famous jam study is a brilliant example. Researchers set up a tasting booth with either 6 types of jam or 24. Now, you'd think more choice is better, right? Well, the big display got more people to stop and look, but when it came to actually buying, sales were way higher at the table with only 6 jams. It's the paradox of choice. Too many options can literally paralyze us.
Okay, so if our brains are full of these little glitches and traps, what are we supposed to do? How do we fight back? Well, the book gives us a really powerful tool. It's a structured framework designed to pull us out of that mental autopilot and make choices that are more conscious and intentional. It's called the DECIDE model.
The DECIDE model gives you a clear 6-step path. It's an acronym, which makes it easy to remember. D is for define the problem. E, establish your criteria. C, consider the pros and cons. I, identify the best alternative. D, develop and implement a plan. And finally, E, evaluate how it's going. It's a straightforward but incredibly effective way to tackle those bigger, more complicated decisions.
Let's just zoom in on that first step for a second. Define the problem. This is absolutely crucial because you have to be super precise. For example, instead of a vague problem like, I'm not happy at my job, you define it with clarity. I'm seeking a role with more opportunities for direct career growth. Do you see the difference? That clarity, it's everything. But here's the thing. Even with a perfect framework, we're still human. We're not robots. And there are these other more subtle forces, fatigue, stress, our emotions, that are always there, bubbling just under the surface, ready to hijack our best laid plans.
This chart tells a pretty shocking story about something called decision fatigue. Researchers looked at parole hearings in Israel. At the start of the day, a prisoner's chance of getting parole was about 65%. But as the day went on and the judges got more and more mentally tired, that chance just plummeted, down to almost nothing.
But here is the most incredible part of that study. After each meal break, the approval rate shot right back up to around 65%. It proves it wasn't about the cases themselves, It was about mental energy. When our brains are tired, they default to the easiest, safest answer, which in that case was just saying no. Sound familiar at the end of a long day?
And of course, it's not just about being tired. Our emotions play a huge role. When we're stressed, we tend to make more impulsive choices. When we're afraid, our judgment of risk gets all warped. The goal isn't to be emotionless. It's to be self-aware. To just take a second before a big decision and ask, hey, how am I feeling right now? And could that be coloring my thinking?
All right, let's start to pull all of this together. Now that we're aware of the traps, the frameworks, and these hidden influences, how do we actually use this to make our next choice a better one? What can we do differently starting today?
If you remember just 3 things, make it these. First, recognize your brain's shortcuts. Just knowing about things like the paradox of choice makes you less likely to fall for them. Second, use a structured framework. For the big stuff, pull out that decide model. And third, manage your mental energy. Make your most important decisions when you're fresh, not at the end of a draining day.
Now, to make this all really stick, let's end with a bit of personal reflection. Take a moment and honestly ask yourself, where have you seen these decision traps, like getting paralyzed by too many options, or just defaulting to the easy no when you're exhausted, show up in your own life?
And for our second question, let's dig a little deeper. Of everything we've talked about, which idea was the most surprising to you? Which one really challenged something you thought you knew? Maybe it was the idea that more choice can be a bad thing, or just how much a lunch break can affect a person's fate. Why did that one stand out to you?
And finally, here's the most important question of all. This is where insight becomes action. Based on what you've learned today, what is one small thing you will start doing, or maybe stop doing, to become a more conscious decision maker?